Welcome to our session or a mini lesson, on knowing and including your audience. I'm Lise Charlier.
And I'm Melissa Osquist.
So we thought that we would talk a little bit from experience on planning your summer course and considering your audience as you do the planning.
So last year I had taught an Excel class, and it was my first time teaching a Severn Institute workshop. I looked at my roster, and I remember just looking at the people on there. There were people from all divisions that taught a variety of subjects, math, history, even people from the lower school. So as I thought about planning, I thought about who these people are, but I made some assumptions about them and what type of content they might be interested in based on their subject areas and grade levels. Um, when we actually got into the workshop and I sort of started to talk to them and figure out what their background was like with Excel, I realized that they had experience that I sort of hadn't anticipated. So, like looking back on it, I wish that I had made some survey or done something to get some information from them ahead of time. Surprisingly, my history teacher knew the most about Excel. Something that I hadn't anticipated, so I wasn't really able to tailor the workshop as much as I would have liked to their specific needs. And that was something that I learned doing this for the first time last year.
So we're asking you to consider a couple things that Melissa just suggested, but one of them is the assumption that you make of your class attendees. Of course, a little parentheses, this would translate very well into what we do in our brick and mortar classes during the full school year. So take a look at your class roster, consider the division that they teach in, the subject matter, why you think they're taking the course, what type of an inventory could you take of their interests. Would it be a survey, like Melissa said, in advance so that you can cater the class to their interests? Remember, one of the big success points that we have in teaching is when we can increase relevance. So people are taking the class to gain new knowledge, certainly, but as much as that knowledge can be relevant to their practice or their interests, then the higher the success rate. And so this might influence, depending on your findings, this might influence some of the things that you choose to do either as breakout groups or background information in preparation for coming to your course, etc. Melissa, do you want to add anything to that?
I just think also, if you put some stuff in that's like specialized, I think a lot of my participants found some things that I added interesting. But if I sort of knew ahead of time what their interests were, I think it just makes it all that more relevant for them. And kind of, even as adults, it's nice to feel like somebody was sort of seeing who we are or what our interests were.
Mm-hmm. And one of the bigger takeaways for us in the summer PD program is that the way we're teaching our peers or sharing with our peers should be methods and pedagogic tools, activities that they can also recreate in the classroom. So one of the things that we're proposing is that you pause periodically in your teaching and have everyone reflect, what assumptions have I made with this activity? Have I assumed that everyone has reading comprehension of a certain level? Am I assuming that everyone has had exposure to this topic or not? If you're starting a whole unit, for example, on the Renaissance, to how many people does the word Michelangelo mean something, or is it for the first time that somebody would be exposed to it? Would some kids have much more vocab to learn than other students? I'm sure in math and science, in science, it's the same thing, assumptions about what math you know.
Right. And I think sometimes it can be hard when you're teaching adults to sort of like model these things, but I also think it's a unique opportunity where we can model the strategies that we want to use in our classroom for the adults, but then also have a discussion as teachers about how we're intentionally using these strategies in our workshops that the participants could then go use throughout the year in their classrooms.
And so this is part of our thread of really inclusion work at Severn. And this is about, ability, it's about socioeconomic background, it's about some gender assumptions that we make. It's also about things like, is your activity based to really show success for extroverts and not introverts? So all these different considerations are things that we hope that you consider as you plan, but as those get implemented and executed in your summer PD program amongst adults, if you can just take some moments to pause and reflect and think of that translation into the classroom, we think that would be helpful. So thank you very much for considering that and for teaching this summer.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.